قال الله تعالى في محكم الكتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين. Today, inshallah, the topic which we'll go over is one which is extremely important for all Muslims to be aware of and for all Muslims to understand and take heed of when they are going about their day-to-day practices. Why? Because it forms the basis for our connection and understanding between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this issue which I'm talking about is the classification of our actions, of our deeds, of every single thing we do in this life. And it is a topic which is related to jurisprudence, it is related to fiqh. And it means that every day, whenever we conduct any action with our hands, with our mouths, with our feet, with our arms or hands, they all have consequences and they all fall into different categories. And according to the fiqh standards from the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, there are generally 5 categories which these acts can fall into. First of all, we have the wajib acts, the acts which are obligatory. Then we have the mustahab acts, the ones which are recommended. Then we have the halal, which is the permissible, and we have the haram, which is the impermissible. And then we have the makruh, which is detestable or disliked. Understanding the distinctions and the differences between these 5 different classifications of any act or deed isn't just something which you learn in the house and you forget about. It isn't just something which you hear in a muhadra and you forget about. These classifications are a necessity, are of the utmost importance in navigating our daily lives in a way in which we can please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and which we can stay away from the things which He tells us to stay away from. So as I mentioned, in our school of thought, we have these 5 classifications. And where we get our sources of fiqh from are 4. The first one is of course the book of Allah, which is the Holy Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which He has sent down as a mercy to mankind. Secondly, we have the sunnah, meaning the actions, the words, and also the silent assertions of the prophets and the imams. Meaning what? If we take the concept of latam, for example, which we talked about before, of course this is found in the Holy Quran, so we have our first basis. We have the imams talking about how it is a good action to do and recommended action, but we also have silent assertions. So when the imam is in the presence of his companions and they conduct the act of latam, the imam stays silent and does not condemn them. Meaning this is one of the sunnahs, with something which they allow. Thirdly, we have consensus, in Arabic, ijma. And then lastly, we have our reasoning, the use of our intellect, the aql. These 4 sources of fiqh are known in our religion as the 4 proofs. They are known as adilat al-arba, the 4 proofs which we derive our jurisprudential fiqh rulings from. And of course the most important and the prime one which we always go back to is the Holy Quran. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, indeed we have sent down the law, we have sent down the sharia, and indeed we are its guardians. Now this divine law, the one which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He is setting forward, this sharia provides the very framework for what is commanded for a human being and for what is prohibited for a human being, and also what lies in between halal and haram. And these are what we will go over today. And as I mentioned, it is our role as Muslims, as people who seek to submit entirely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of our actions and deeds, to seek knowledge of these laws, to seek an understanding of these rulings. Why? So that we can submit to them with sincerity and knowledge and basira. The most important is the wajib, the wajibat. These are the most critical, and you will hear certain terms being used simultaneously regarding the wajibat. We have fard and we have wajib. In our belief, these are the same things. They have the same meanings and the same connotations. Wajib, or actions which are wajib, are acts which the performance of them is obligatory upon all of us. It is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if we do not carry out these acts which are wajib, then we will be punished for them. To omit a wajib act from your life is something which carries the punishment of sin, something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemns. Now the wajibat are non-negotiable, meaning you cannot pick and choose whether you want to do them or you do not want to do them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets forth what the wajibat are, and He expects every single Muslim, every single individual who claims to submit to Him to carry out these actions. And as we mentioned, the wajib acts are derived from the Holy Quran and from the Sunnah of Rasulullah and his family, the Ahlul Bayt. For example, we have the obligation of the 5 daily prayers. Everyone recognizes that our salah is wajib. We cannot pick and choose whether we want to pray Salat al-Maghrib or we don't want to pray it. We have to pray it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to. In the Holy Quran He says, maintain the prayer and pay the zakat. Similarly, during the month of Ramadan, we are obligated to fast and to refrain from eating up until the point where the darkness arises in the night. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. In the Holy Quran He says, O you who have faith, prescribed for you is fasting as it was prescribed for those who were before you, so that you may be God conscious. Now these actions, salat, zakat, fasting, Sawm in Shahr Ramadan, these are all wajib acts. And when somebody performs an act which is wajib upon him, then it brings that person immense reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It brings immense pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the person who does these acts will gain the reward and the blessings from it. But to abandon the act which is wajib without any valid excuse brings about a great punishment on that person. It is a great sin upon that person's soul if they omit these acts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with that person accordingly on the Day of Judgment if that person does not have a valid excuse and neglects the acts which are wajib. To stress the importance, for example, of the salah, we have lots of different ahadith from our imams and from the Prophet himself, which say that the person who is aware that the salah is wajib and he does not pray the salah and he neglects it on purpose, then he is not from among us, meaning he is not from amongst the Muslims. This is very severe, very dangerous for a person. When he meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment and Allah asks him, why didn't you pray? He says, I was lazy. I didn't think it was important. This is not an excuse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look at that person and say, no, you had the opportunity to learn about it and you learned about it. You had the knowledge that this was something wajib upon you, it's something I commanded you to do, and yet you chose your own desires over it. And the punishment for this, we know, is that that person may not be classed even as a Muslim. And so it's extremely important that all of the wajib acts are done, even if it means that you do not do any action in your life which is from the mustahabbat, something which is mustahab. As long as you are doing all of the wajib actions, then you are completely fine. There is no problem whatsoever in doing so. Which brings us on to the second part, the mustahabbat. An action or any act which is deemed as mustahab is something which is recommended, something which is preferable, something which is desirable, something which is good and beneficial for you to do. Performing an act which is mustahab brings about a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It brings a person closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if you do not do an action which is mustahab, then there is no punishment upon you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment will not look at you and say, I am punishing you because you did not do this mustahab. No, it's okay. It is better for you to do it, hence the name mustahab, recommended, preferable, desired, but it is not wajib upon you to do it. And the life of Rasulullah and the life of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are filled with examples of these actions which are mustahab, which demonstrate extra devotion. Not just what you have to do, not just the basics, but going above and beyond to try and gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the recommended mustahab actions are the nafilah prayers, for example. the prayers which are recommended before all of your wajib salah. Even though the nafila prayers are not wajib, they help elevate your spirituality, help elevate your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and build your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example is giving charity and giving money to the poor beyond what is wajib, beyond the zakat which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders you to pay. The Holy Quran even tells us about these recommended actions. It says that you will never attain piety, you will never attain taqwa until you spend out of what you love. Meaning that extra money which you have should not be kept for yourself to buy yourself fancy clothes and cars and watches. It should be spent on the poor. And Allah tells us that you will not gain that closeness to Him unless you carry out this act. From our ahadith, we have a narration from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, who tells us that the mustahab acts, the recommended acts, are a provision, they are a preparation, they are facilitating the obligatory acts. Meaning that when you start to do mustahab acts, it becomes to be easier for you to do the wajib acts. Meaning that if you spend money out of what you have past the zakat level, then you will find it easier to pay that zakat. You will feel free from any uncleanliness which tries to pollute you from carrying out these actions. And it means that if you consistently perform the mustahab actions, you build what's called a spiritual reserve within you. Meaning that if you are deficient in any of your wajib acts, or if you're not doing well in some of your actions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say you're slacking because you're tired or you're lazy, at least you can fall back sometimes on the rewards from what your mustahab actions have accumulated within you. Then we move on to the third category, which is the halal. And it's important to understand the concept of halal in this setting, in the fiqh world. In the linguistic sense, halal, of course, means something which is permissible, something which is allowed, something which is lawful. But in the broader context, halal means all of the actions and all of the things which are allowed in the Sharia. And this also includes the term mubah, something which is neutral. When something is neutral, it means that there is no punishment or there is no reward. There is no issue with it, but there is no necessarily benefit to it. This concept mubah falls into the concept of halal, the overall concept of halal. For instance, when someone is looking to have halal sustenance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, O mankind, eat of which is lawful, halal, and which is good on the earth. In this verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says lawful, He translates it, or retranslates it from halal into lawful. And it means that it is free from any haram. It is free from any prohibition. He has told us that this is something we are allowed to do. And it's important to also reiterate that the acts which are mubah, neutral, are also halal. There is no act which is mubah which is haram or which is makruh, because this is a separate category. Anything which is mubah falls into the category of halal. However, halal can also bring about more positive connotations than just mubah. It can have a greater meaning and a greater benefit than something which is neutral. For example, if there is an animal which is slaughtered according to the Islamic law and according to the Sharia, we don't say that the meat of this animal is mubah. We don't say it's neutral. We say, alaykum salam, that it is halal, it is permissible, it is lawful, it is absolutely okay without any problems to eat that meat. Therefore, the concept of halal sometimes implies that something has been made lawful for us through a specific process. In this case, killing the animal, done in a certain way, brings it above neutral, makes it halal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets forward the criteria for this. It moves it from the state of mubah, where there is potentially something haram, potentially, into something of which there is clear permissibility, there is clear halal. And the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam placed a great emphasis especially on seeking a livelihood and seeking money and sustenance through halal means. A narration which we have from Imam al-Rida alayhi salam says that the pursuit of sustenance is wajib upon every individual. And something important, when we talk about the sustenance and the money we have being halal, in this country especially, means that our work, our jobs should be done within the framework of Islam, not within the framework of the Western world, whereby you can do a haram job and therefore get haram money. It's very easy for you to do it, whether it be fraud, whether it be selling alcohol, whether it be claiming benefits from the government which you're not entitled to do. This is haram. This does not fall into halal sustenance, does not fall into halal money. Go to any marja, go to any scholar, and you say to them, I'm claiming the benefits from the government. Are you entitled to them? No. Haram. Your money is haram. What you buy with that money is haram. You buy a house for your family, you think you're providing for them, but it comes from something haram. You think there will be blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that house? You think the angels will come and visit you in that house? You think the dua, the supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that house will be accepted? No. Therefore, seeking money through the halal means, even if it means that your life is difficult and your life is tough and you have to go through struggles, is one of the best struggles, one of the best blessings and rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, seeking the halal doesn't just mean avoiding the haram. It means that you have to actively pursue and actively go out and make all of the foundations of your life in all shapes and forms something which is dedicated only to making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. Now the fourth category is the opposite of halal. The fourth category is the haram. And this refers to any of the actions or any of the deeds which are not lawful, which are forbidden by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are prohibited. And what you must realize about haram action is that any haram act which you do incurs a very large punishment and wrath and anger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that person. If there is a haram act, then it is wajib on you to stay away from it, to not commit it. We have examples again from the Holy Quran. For example, drinking alcohol or gambling, whether it be placing bets, doing the lottery. Allah says, O you who believe, indeed wine, gambling, idols and divining arrows are abominations of shaitan's doing. So avoid them so that you may be successful. Another one is the prohibition of usury, of interest. When you go to the bank, they have interest on your money. This is not allowed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to trade, has allowed us to use business, to use our money, but He has forbidden the use of interest on this money. Therefore, if someone engages in something haram, he does not just invoke a punishment on him from Allah when he dies. When someone commits a haram action in this world, he corrupts his soul, because in his heart, all of his actions and all of his mindset and thoughts become accustomed to the haram. He starts thinking, it's okay, I haven't been punished in this world yet, therefore I will continue to do the haram. It doesn't just harm him, but it harms the society around him. If he's drinking alcohol, then he becomes an alcoholic. His family begins to fall apart. He begins to annoy people in the street. He wastes the time of the police if they have to come and arrest him. All of these things. And also, as we mentioned, it creates the distance between that person and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It creates a very wide gap. Meaning that if that person wants to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he wants to get through to him and have his deeds and his good deeds accepted, it is much more difficult because he is so used to the haram. He is distancing himself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from his creator. And the last category, the fifth one, is the makruh. Makruh is the actions which are disliked and which we are advised to stay away from. It is better and it is more rewarding from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we stay away from them. However, if you commit an act which is makruh, will you be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. If you do an action which is makruh, you will not be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if you stay away from that act, He will reward you for it. Meaning it is better for you to do it. Now the evidence for a ruling on something which is makruh is less decisive than something which is haram, which has been declared to be haram. And the makruh actions, we usually find them from the hadith. We find them from the sayings and the statements either of Rasulullah or from the imams of the Ahlul Bayt. And they indicate that, for example, certain actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes them. He prefers you not to do them. An example of a makruh act is eating food or drinking whilst you are standing up rather than when you are sitting down without any need. It is reported from Rasulullah that he discouraged people from eating and drinking whilst they are standing up unless they have a need or a necessity to do so. The reason for it, there are different reasons, various reasons. We may not know all of them, but all we know is that he tells us we shouldn't do it, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala probably does not like us to do it. The reasoning, of course, potentially scientific, it is not good for the body. Islam has all of these answers which science only finds in the newer ages and newer days. And so there is a hikmah, there is a wisdom behind it. Another example is having tattoos, wishing. Having the tattoos is not haram. In itself, having a tattoo, there is no ruling that says it is haram in our belief, in the method of Ahlul Bayt. What the Marajah say and what the scholars say is that having the tattoo is makruh. Meaning that if you have a tattoo, you won't get punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it is better for us to stay away from it. And especially we should take heed, the younger people, when we are young we think we can just do the makruh actions. But we shouldn't think like this. We should try and stay away from the makruh. Why? Because when you grow later on in life, you'll realize that it was better for your soul and for your body to stay away from the makruh acts. And the hikmah behind identifying which action is makruh and which is not, and staying away from the makruh, the reason we have this category is so that it can train a mu'min, it can train a believer to try and choose something which is better for him, to try and go down a course of action or to go down a path where there is a choice and he chooses the one which is better for him rather than the one which is worse. The outcome is that he will have heightened taqwa in his daily life and he will gain proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, this classification of acts from the wajib, from the mustahib, the makruh, the halal, the haram, all of these are a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these are categories which we should try and decipher between, understand, learn the rulings, learn what is halal, learn what is haram, learn what is makruh, learn what is mustahib, and follow what is wajib. The wajib and the haram set the boundaries which protect our faith and protect our society. The mustahib and the makruh act as guides, either guides towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and closer onto His path, Sirat al-Mustaqim, or down to the path, inevitably, of haram and the path of shaitan. And our responsibility is to know as much as we can about these issues through our sources, through the Quran, through the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, and through our ulama and our marajah who provide the explanations from the Quran and the hadith. And by trying to understand and implement these rulings in our life, we can hope to live as true Muslims, true submitters to the Creator, to our Lord. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the strength to perform our wajibat, to perform our obligations. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the enthusiasm and the courage to do the acts which are mustahib, which are recommended. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from the haram and the makruh acts. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.